Right, I am going to try and speed paint parts of this. So I don't know how well that's going to work. It's a metal model, so I don't really know if speed painting is a good approach for this kind of miniature. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to try it as best as I can and see what happens really. So I've decided that I wanted to start off with this with actually using a what's it called, the bone coloured undercoat, and that's, you know, I don't know if that's a good colour to use or what, but we're going to find out as I use different paints and see what happens. So one thing that I am curious about is this Griffcat Charger contrast. I want to see how well it looks over this bone colour. So I've done it over greys in the past, but I've never done it over this. I think it's called Wraith Bone. So let's see how it looks when it goes over it. Because I want a kind of a nice blue dress. Of course, one thing about this model is it needs to feel, I suppose, have a certain unreal quality. I think that's one of the key things about the damsels, is you want them to have an almost, not ethereal, but definitely an otherness to them that's probably hard to describe. So I'm going to see how well this Griff Charger rolls over this bone. Now so far I think that's looking really nice. But of course the proof is always going to be when it dries. And I do think that's one of the key points about a lot of these contrasts. They might look one way while you're using them. They even look a particular way when they're fresh, as it were, out the pot. I mean, this colour, although it looks kind of similar, if you just look at it in the pot, it's a very, very deep colour. But when you start putting it on a base, it's amazing how rapidly it changes. But I have to admit, I'm liking that. Now what I'm trying to do is make sure that I really push the shadows as well. I'm trying to get it to properly pool in those shadows right there. Certainly where it's looking like it's a lot darker. I have to admit, as a kind of colour for one of these, I actually think it works. But as we know, I mean, you can never be certain until you're done and you see everything working together, all the different choices that you make, right down to how you run the brush along the model. All of these things are going to impact how this looks at the end. I have to admit though, I'm liking it. I'm just trying to get the colour to sit in the folds of her dress just right. And I think that's probably going to be one of the big things about this to make it look right, is getting the colour to settle where I want it to. But so far, I am really chuffed. I've never run like this kind of contrast. I think is it Wraithbone, the undercoat. I really need to check what undercoats I use on things properly. I'm pretty certain it's the sprays, the Wraithbone, isn't it? Right. The next part is getting into those little areas there. Hey, do you know what? I mean, if I do say so myself, I think that really works as a colour, doesn't it? And I actually genuinely am worried now that if I went over it again, it would actually be far darker than it needs to be for this particular model. Ted, I've never used this really. I've painted up some Deathwings, but I didn't really use pure contrast. I think I used like the Skeleton Horde to get the initial colour on, but I didn't the intention wasn't really to paint it in Skeleton Horde, that was just to create a shade. I think what I need to do is I need to push this downwards just to get into those, basically into her corset. Probably be the correct term there, wouldn't it? Right, okay, you know what? That looks amazing on the first coat. I think that actually is a perfect colour for this miniature. I'm just making sure I've covered everywhere more than anything. Right. So I'm just going to give that a few minutes to dry there. And what I'll do, I'll just pick out an additional colour. So the next colour I kind of want to look at using here, where is it? Is this Pilar Glacier. Not used this one yet. I don't know. This is a very light colour, you see. And I'm going to get this on her arms here. The cloth of her arms. In fact, this would look a really nice colour for her sword, if I'd thought about that in advance. Okay. Right, I think as a core base colour it will work, but it will need more than one application. I probably need to let that dry as well now, don't I? Okay, next little part then. Just get my brush safe. And what I'm only 10 minutes in and I've already started getting quite a few little parts of this done. What I want to do next is I want to find a suitable tone, flesh tone for her. And I think that's one of those where I don't think there's much in the way of contrast flesh tones yet. So what we might be looking at here is finding a flesh tone. Let me think what would work. That I can more dry brush into it. See, I can never find a good flesh tone when I'm looking for one. I could go for Kislev flesh. I used to have some I think I used to have a dry specifically for elven flesh tones, and that in itself could potentially be a good flesh tone I could use. However, I think I'm going to go for this Kislev one. Gosh, Kislev's not exactly doing well at the moment. Right. So let's start doing this. Let's start just getting this flesh colour together. Excuse me, my lady, but I need to manoeuvre around your bosom. Looks like I'm paying a hell of a lot of attention to her chest, but it's all. I have to try and make sure that I get it properly covered, and that's my excuse. Covers a lot of flesh. It really needs to be sorted out. It's not exactly. Altogether, it's separated a bit more than I want. Now, what I am noticing, unfortunately, is that where I've got the contrast on her skin, it's showing through a bit more, too much. These small fingers done as well. I mean, for a metal miniature, her proportions are very good. Normally, the old metal miniatures didn't always have very good proportions to them. Well, at least that was my knowledge anyway, but I suppose I only really painted metal dwarfs and metal goblin, so I suppose they were always going to be disproportionate to a human. Get in there. Right, make sure I've got all of this. Another lay down here. Looking well, my lady. Now that it's getting some colour on it, you know what? This is a beautiful miniature. There's no other way to put it, is there? Right. Okay. I think, based on what I can see, the blue that I decided on just isn't really the right colour. It's too bright. So, and it just means that it's not creating a nice effect. So what I am going to do is I'm going to use a far deeper blue this time. So I'm actually going to get some Leviathan blue contrast and use it here. But I am going to make the same approach. I'm going to see if I can really push it in the right way so that it flows into the recesses just right. That's what a hard little bit to do, eh? Come in, get in there. Said I'm not a natural speed painter. in a lot of ways. I tend to find that most days I just can't work at a rapid pace for very long because it requires sitting in a very particular positions. But today I am feeling like I'm doing well. Okay, then I'm going to use that same blue because I think it does work down here. And it's definitely hanging on to that bone colour just right. In fact, I think when I paint my brother's Bretonnian army, I am seriously considering starting in a Wraithbone base. Because look at how easy this is. Now, what else do I need to do here? Right, now I need to get her hair looking, well, nice, to be rather blunt about it. So, her hair, what colour shall I head towards her hair? White does seem to be a very common colour for the hair on these, so maybe I don't need to actually do anything too complex. What I might just need to do, I've lost the colours that I want. So I've got a skeleton hold contrast here, and I just need a little bit of Wraithbone. And the Wraithbone is just to fix a little mistake that I made before. Basically where I've got onto the hair while I've been doing the other bits. Just gonna no, see, this is what the problem with metal miniatures. It's so easy to accidentally lose some of the paint, particularly your base layers. There we go. Right. So plan is I'm going to use the skeleton hood contrast now to basically get her hair right. I'm really hoping this works as a colouring. So it should give me not a white hair. I don't want white hair on her, but I don't want blonde, and I don't want too much of a brunette either. Oh, look at that. Now I think that looks amazing. I can't believe how good that looks. I know some people will be looking at it going, come on, it ain't that good. You're not amazing. No, I'm not amazing. I'm not pretending I'm being amazing here. What I'm doing is I'm trying to paint a miniature as quickly as possible to a battle-ready standard. And I'm happy because I've never, ever painted a metal miniature with contrast before. So I didn't know how this would pan out. It could have just been a disaster. The hard part is getting my brush down places like that. Right, make sure I've got all that hair done. Now, I think this is going to work as a flesh tone. Now, it might be a bit too dark, but I've got a plan. Actually, do you know what? That flesh tone is working well now against the other colours. Right, yay. Do you know what? She's starting to pick some really nice... I'm not pretending that this is like some kind of amazing paint job here. That's not what I'm trying to claim. So please don't, you know, beat me down for acting like I'm amazing when that's not what I'm trying to say here. What I'm trying to say is actually for what I'm trying to achieve in a very short time, this is, you know, I can't complain. Right, I'm going to actually use some of this Garakax sewer now. And that is to do around this belt here. No, I'm really worried. Because this is... Just trying to get this just in right. Yeah. Hold on. Now look at that again. You see, that's flowing quite beautifully there. Then we've got a little bit of a chain here. Again, I think this will work well running down it. And I think if I run it onto this little key here, and then what we've got is we've got that. Yeah, it's run a bit too much. That is a problem. Didn't realise that this colour was so runny. I'm going to do it on this metalwork here as well. Because what I'll do later on with this metalwork is I'll dry brush it in a light silver to finish it off. Okay. Okay, that's actually coming along now, isn't it? As I said, I don't normally speed paint, but I'm kind of really want to get things done. So seeing if this is going to kind of work how I want it to. Right, now I need to get a wood effect here. So I think something like, let me check here what I've got. Yeah, this Doombull brown I want to go for with the wood, because that's a common colour that I've used right the way along on my browns. Breathe. Breathe. I like this Doombull brown. It works great as a reddish wood colour. Right, finish that part now with a larger brush. Save myself a bit of time. I'm really curious about how quickly I can finish this miniature and be happy with it. Okay, next I've got a bit of Blood Angel contrast. And I'm just going to work this here onto her sword. Now, I think the other thing is these are like little jewels by the look of it, so that's going to be a lot of fun to try and get right. I think the next thing I need to do though is I just need to get this sword underway. So I'm just going to fix where I've gone off. Put a bit more, put some fresh wreath bone over this. If I just slowed down a bit, I wouldn't have had this problem, but you know. Oh, look at what's happened. Can you see there? I've had a little bit of red and it's gone onto my glove and now it's gone here. So what I'm going to do is I should be able to fix that, fingers crossed, by doing that. And then when I've done that, I should be able to put the Griff charger back over it to fix it. Just make sure I haven't messed up anywhere else with that horrible colour. No, it's okay. Not that bad, I was really worried. Okay. So, I think next part to do is to start looking at how I can get that sword a nice colour. So I think if I get myself a reasonable shade of silver, nothing too over the top. I think Iron Breaker will do for this one. My Iron Breaker looks like it has been sat for a long time. There we go, got my Iron Breaker now. Just had to spend a bit of time sorting it out. Yeah, it's still far too thin, that. It's far too thin in places. Try and mix it a bit more to thicken it up. I think it's a very thin paint as well, unfortunately, Iron Breaker. So what I might need to do, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to keep a certain amount of Wraithbone shining through. I don't want to lose it completely. So I add some silver, but I don't want it to dominate. This is the thing. I just don't want it completely and utterly dominating the colour of the model, of the metal work. Particularly since I'm going to be adding let's have a look here. Don't know if this is just too separated or what. I'm getting there. Anyway, I just don't think this Iron Breaker is quite working as well as it should do. I think there's, I think it's separated completely out, and now it needs a hard shake, basically. Far harder shake than I've got time for right now. Get my paint shaker out to do this. But what I'm going to do, I'll just put that to one side, because let's see if I can now add the next layer what I wanted to. So let's see if this one will prove better. Chainmail. Runefang steel, sorry, not chainmail, Runefang steel. Yeah. Okay, now that that's going over the lead belcher, that is actually working a bit better. So I'm managing to keep the wraith bone, which I really wanted to make sure I kept hold of, and giving it a nice light metal. And a light metal is definitely something that I wanted to have. And then chainmail over this. Come on, just work now. As long as it works, I'll be happy. There we go, that's it. That's working. Whew, I was really worried that was not going to work for me then, and I'll have ended up with an absolute mess. Now, next is to get some colour on the other metal work, so it's not all just silver, silver, silver. So I'm going to get my Rune Lord, sorry, not Rune Fang, Rune Lord. And I'm going to pick up this crown. Now, I want the crown to actually end up gold. But I tend to find that whenever I try and just put gold straight on a miniature, it never turns out the way I want it to. But my goodness, that is a thin band around her head. Again, anywhere else that I basically want to be gold at the end, that's where I'm going to put this Rune Fang colour. Makes me worry when I'm painting like live like this. There's no time to stop and reflect and say to myself, oh, that's not working really, not in any long-winded way. So I'm just going to have to push through, see what it looks like at the end, and you know what, maybe later on I'll come back to it and fix up a few things if I'm not happy with them. But I think from what I'm getting so far, I don't know if I can actually complain about what's happened here. It looks nice. It's not a masterpiece by anyone's standards. But what I'm trying to do is see how quickly I can do this model. All right. See what else we've got to play around with here. No, that's all right. Okay. Right, I'm going to use a bit more of this red contrast. Oh no, I can't use that there because I've got... No, that's not going to work, is it? Right. I'm going to have to pick a different colour for that gem. I think then I need greens that could potentially work as gems. So things like Lauren Forest. She's got what looks like a gem in the pommel of her sword here. See, look how, this is what I worry about with these metal miniatures. You touch the wrong place and you take your paint off, and I hate it. Because it just feels horrible afterwards. And you're like, oh, got to find a way to fix that. Anywhere else? Yeah, that'll do them. I'm just double checking. Yeah, I've got to be, look, it's so easy with these metal miniatures to scratch little bits up, and so frustrating because then you've got to go back over. I mean, it's probably my own fault. I should be sticking to holding the base, not the miniature. But I'm so used to plastic miniatures where I can just grab wherever I need. I'm just not used to this anymore. But while I'm here, just get this on a right. Right, it's time to hopefully start putting on the main finishing touches on this model. As said, it's actually been a lot easier than I thought it would be. Going and repainting a metal miniature, but I'm making mistakes because I'm forgetting some of the kind of problems you get from painting metal miniatures, like easily scratching them, easily rubbing the paint off. You can imagine that, you know, by contrast, the newer, more plastic is just so much easier. I tend to find it's more forgiving if you make mistakes. Right, let's get some Retributor armour on here to finish her off. And don't pick her up. Wait, anything other than the base. Just little bits like this now, come on. So close to getting this one nicely done. I'm not 100% sure what most people would agree would class as a speed paint. I think for me, I'm classing this as a speed paint for myself, obviously. But whether or not it's a speed paint by most people's standards, who knows? Right. I think then it's just really more tidying up those little mistakes that I've made. And then I am classing her as battle ready. So I'm not saying she's display ready. I'm not about to, you know, start claiming she's ready to go like to Golden Demon, because she ain't. But I do feel that I'll be very happy to put her on a battlefield and not feel completely ashamed of the quality. Now, as I said, the biggest issue is here is the mistakes that I've made along the way, and I've got to try and correct those without completely messing up what I've already achieved with her. Put a little bit of darker in there just to give it a proper effect, probably in a couple of other areas as well. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm happy with this dress now. I think it could be darker in places, and I think that's what I've just got to try and do now. Particularly under the arms. I think under the arms I need a bit more shading. Let's say shading, a bit more contrast to give it the feeling of shadow. And finally, the hardest part for me, because I'm terrible at this part, making her look googly-eyed, because that's important. That she, I finish her off with my typical terrible googly-eyed way of doing things. Probably just a little bit of colour on those jewels there. Yeah. Hey, you know what? I think that I'm happy with that. She's battle ready, or at least I hope you feel she's battle ready. I think she's got some good looks to her, and I'm quite happy to call her done. A couple of little, this is the thing, every time I'm looking I'm like, oh no, there's where I've held it. Shouldn't have held it on the metal. Gonna have varnish her in a bit, aren't I? Keep her safe. There we go. I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you like that I've tried my best to do a speed paint, because, you know, it's not something I normally do. So, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll bring you more painting videos where I try and pretend I'm a good painter.